Ladies and gentlemen, people of all gender expressions, thank you for checking out the North Bank Media Podcast. I am your host, Patrick Strevens. Joining me on the show this afternoon was Olivia Fata. I met Olivia 3 or 4 years ago at a wedding, which she was coordinating, planning, and I'd been drinking, so it's nice of her to agree to see me again all these years later. Really enjoyed talking to her. I love talking to people on this show who, they have a day job. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's got a whole life, but she's also got the side hustle. Her wedding coordination, wedding planning business was her side hustle, and it actually is now becoming her full-time job. I think that's such a great story, a great arc that I love to hear about. Really was great to sit down and talk to her about the ins and outs of wedding planning. Some tips if you're looking to plan your wedding. People might be looking at me and saying, yeah, tips for if you're looking to plan your wedding. But Olivia has been great to me personally. About a year ago, I started a website, an online service where I offer video slideshows. And she's been all too happy to help me promote that through her offering. So really, she's a colleague. She's a friend, and I really enjoyed talking to her. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with the lovely Olivia Fata.
Thank you for having me.
So, I think the backstory here was that I attended a wedding that you planned. It was a friend of my girlfriend's. So I only ever met you once.
Yeah.
In the hall, and I apologize because I know I was for sure hammered.
I hope so.
Well, that's what it's all about, right? So that was summer 2018, and now here we are almost 3 years later. Is that right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, when did you get into wedding planning? Maybe just tell me, is that what you consider yourself, first of all?
I guess a wedding planner is the correct term. Okay. I consider myself more a wedding coordinator.
Okay.
Mainly because I focus a lot on wedding day management. Okay. So okay. I'm the one that makes sure the day goes smoothly. So typically, my couples come to me with their wedding day all planned and organized, and I'm the one that coordinates it all and makes sure the logistics are all there, nothing's overseen, and all the vendors show up and do what they're hired to do.
Right. So you're almost like a producer on set or like a floor manager on a theater production, right?
Exactly.
That's crazy. Well, is it crazy? Why? Why do you want to do that with your life?
I love watching just the sheer joy of it all coming together. I've been part of weddings, whether it's a bridal party or just a guest at weddings, and seen shit shows happen, for lack of better terms.
It's part of the fun.
And I come from hospitality, so I've seen it every single angle, and it's literally what I enjoy doing. It's where my passion lies. Yeah. So why not? Why not do it full time now?
Why not? I had a guy in here last week who was into hospitality. He runs a restaurant, Rebel Food and Drink on the West End.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess that's not really me. Maybe I'm a selfish asshole or something like that, but it's like serving others. I hadn't really ever thought about it seriously. Was that something in you from a young age?
So my parents owned a restaurant growing up.
There you go.
So it was instilled in me. I started hostessing when I was 11.
Wow. Is that legal?
I don't know. Don't send this to anybody.
I'm setting this out. There's no stopping it now.
So yeah, I was kind of just instilled with me. I remember going to karaoke nights. You're legally allowed to have your children in a bar if they're blood relatives. So
really,
totally legal.
What an old law that sounds like.
Right? Yeah, I bet you it's changed since then.
Okay.
But I remember going to karaoke nights with my parents, in pajamas. I remember being probably 8. And just sitting there and watching my mom do karaoke. So yeah, it was literally instilled in me from day one, basically.
Right. You saw the way your parents brought joy to people, the way they made their night a little easier just for an hour or two.
Yeah. And that's what it was all about, just having that customer satisfaction. And the customer may not always be right, but making them feel heard is so important, and making them happy. They may come in there grumpy as all hell, but making them leave happy is really what it's all about.
Right. Okay. Well, good for you, because that's a pretty unselfish way to look at the world, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is like just listen and just see where we can kind of go with it. So, but then, so when did you transition out of, I guess, restaurant stuff and more into what you're doing now? Has it been a long, winding road, or?
Yeah, so I, right out of high school, I went into the family business, did that for a couple years, and then I went and got my special event management certificate in 2010.
Okay.
So after I got that done, I was still managing restaurants full-time, and then I got offered a position as a hotel event coordinator.
Okay.
So I was working full-time, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5 kind of thing, and then evenings I was serving and managing a restaurant. So I've always been someone that's had a lot on my plate.
Sounds like it. So that's the other thing, is like, because you're an entrepreneur technically now, right? You run your own business. Was that in you from a young age? Maybe because your parents were that, or?
Yeah, it was never a goal of mine, oddly enough.
Really?
I never, ever thought I'd be on my own doing this. But here I am, almost 6 weeks into it, and it's crazy how happy I am.
Yeah? You said 6 weeks, 6 years.
Well, 6 weeks officially doing nothing but weddings or events.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, so, right, because when we talked last time, what did you have on the side?
Yeah, so I was working full-time in the corporate world. I've been doing that since I have a daughter. So since she was about 2.5, I went back to work full-time. So she's 8 now. So yeah, it's been a couple years of me managing like a full-time career, a family life, and then weddings on the side.
So when do you sleep? Like, when do you, like, what's missing there? Like, where's the gap? Do you find there's a gap with the work-life balance? Like, does something get left behind? Or?
My husband always bugs me that's him.
Oh boy, okay. Well, this is not marriage counseling on this show, so maybe we'll bring him in here. Actually, that's what we should do.
Get his side. I am all about, like, wedding season is typically for me May to September. So I'm really busy from spring to fall, and then I have that winter downtime.
Right, where you can kind of refocus and recenter.
100%.
Right on. So when you were doing wedding planning at first, was that with like an agency or with like partners, or was it always just like a solo pursuit?
Yeah, so I started off in hotels. I worked for restaurants, catering, doing weddings and events.
Okay, I see.
So I've had a little bit in kind of every industry, so I've seen a lot of angles.
Nice.
I'm really interested now. I've started a few groups throughout Edmonton just to see kind of how vendors can help each other, because as much as I'm working for the client, I also don't want a DJ to come in and be uncomfortable or not have what he needs to be successful, because at the end of the day, if the DJ's not doing his job, I'm not doing my job.
And there's no party if the DJ's not doing his job.
Exactly. So I'm really into, networking right now and building those connections, because at the end of the day, you need a happy vendor team to have a successful wedding.
Well, I thought that was so cool when you told me that you don't necessarily, you have like a list of preferred vendors, and it's very much like a network of other entrepreneurs almost, right? Is that fair to say? Is that how the wedding industry kind of seems to be? I know, like, with wedding videographers, photographers, that's just like an endless list of freelancers basically in agencies. Yeah. But is it like that catering?
Yeah, so I try to work with, like to work with everybody once at the very least, right? I mean, and everyone's going to have their bad days and their good days and their strengths and weaknesses. But with there being so many amazing, caterers in the city, you're going to find really, really good people that do charcuterie boards, really, really good people that do barbecue in the backyard. And in Alberta, there is a niche for each and every single one of them. So it's having those people in your back pocket, working with them, building those relationships to know, okay, hey, Olivia's calling me. Obviously, she needs this. Let's show her what we can do. And I've met people that I haven't had the chance to work with yet, but I'm so excited to have that opportunity.
Right. Well, and so much of it is who you know, right? And you have to be able to, I found too, it's about like, you have to be able to trust the person first and foremost. And then like, you have to like them too, right? And it's like, and if they do good work, that's the cherry on top in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of stuff to cover. I want to just get this one right out of the way right now. What is the single worst thing you've ever witnessed at a wedding? No naming, no names or anything that would characterize who this was, but
I've seen it more than once. Okay. I think it's really difficult when bridal parties forget what it's about. Okay. So I've seen it where the bridal party makes it more so about them and them having fun and them looking their best, and forget that it's about bride, the groom, their moment together, their love, their celebration. I mean, they're spending tens of thousands of dollars on this day. So I think people need to remember to put their emotions away for 12 hours at the very most.
Can you please forget about yourself for a day?
Yeah, I've seen some really sad moments happen just because people, you're caught up and emotions are high for everybody, whether it's your best friend, your sister, brother, whatever it is. Just remembering that what this day is about and what it's, the first step. Weddings are huge moments. They may not be the most important day of their life, but they're going to be huge milestones in these people's moments. So just letting them have it.
For sure. Let them have it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wonder if that's probably, is it like a selfishness that creeps up, like with bridesmaids maybe, or?
Yeah, I haven't figured out if it's like selfish or jealousy or just, some people like to be the center of attention, right? So it may just be the moment's not focused on them.
Right.
And funny enough, I got married last March, so I was a COVID bride as well.
Wow. Why did you do that? I guess you almost didn't know it was so early into it, right?
Yeah, we got married on March 23rd, so it was literally.
Oh my God.
Yeah, almost
5 days.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah. Congrats.
Thanks. So yeah, we had no idea, obviously, when we set a wedding date, that it was going to be
what
COVID.
It was.
Yeah. I mean, we planned our wedding, obviously. I wanted a long engagement, so we got engaged December 2019, and I wanted a 5-year engagement. That was like going into the plan.
What is that all about? Bigger ring? I don't know.
It was just, I was never in a rush I always wanted to get engaged. I was never in a rush to get married.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Please say more, because that's it. There's something there.
See, I had the rule that I didn't want to live with a significant other until we were engaged. I had a relationship from the past. That's where my daughter's from.
Okay.
So it was just, I didn't want to move to the next step until I had that commitment. So my husband was very aware of I have a 5-year plan for everything. My husband's very aware of who I am. We've known each other for 12 years now.
Oh, wow.
So he knew that, okay, if I'm getting into this, I know what I'm getting into, kind of thing.
Right.
I don't hide who I am.
I get a 5-year warranty on this thing, actually.
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, good for you. You know what you wanted. I think that's cool. Going back to what you're saying about crazy moment, like selfish or whatever it is at weddings, I wrote, so I built that website and I wrote one article on the blog, which is so typical. It's like, I got to start a blog and write one article and then, oh shit. But I wrote that I thought that weddings are this crazy moment, crazy day where the past, the present, and the future are all just kind of swirling around each other. And that's why the slideshows are so beneficial.
Very important.
Right? Because you see that arc in a few minutes. But what do you think about that? The past, you see these people's lives, people from their past, to this present moment, this fundamentally important moment. But then there's this recognition where it's like, these people are going to spend the rest of their lives together. They're going to die together, essentially. What do you think about that? Does that seem fair, or am I up to lunch?
I think that's very important, is because a lot of the couples I'm dealing with now are postponements from 2020. So couples focus so much on what's this person going to think? What are my parents going to think if I have to postpone? Or what are they going to think if I have to cut from 150 down to 10 people? Right. How is Aunt blah, blah, blah going to feel if she's not invited to the wedding? And my best friend of 14 years is, even though I haven't seen Aunt whoever in a year and a half, right? So people are so concerned about everyone else's emotions, they tend to leave theirs at the door, kind of thing. And I completely respect it, right? But they need to also remember that this is, they don't want to look back at their wedding in 5 years and be like, oh, I really wish that my best friend was there. And my aunt, I haven't seen since my wedding day.
Right. That's a tough call, though.
So I always ask very specifically, how do you feel? And I ask the bride and the groom, because the brides are very, this is typically brides dream about their day from when they're little girls, where grooms are like, I don't care, whatever she wants. And that's adorable, and I completely love that, but it's also about him as well.
Sure.
So it's trying to get remind them, I said, you guys are going to be together for the rest of your life. Your mother-in-law is totally going to be there, but she's not the one you're going to wake up to every single day for the next 25, 50 years.
True. Hopefully.
Depending on your living situation.
Right. Which we don't judge here on this show.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. And do you find, is it hard for the bride to, or do you have to strike a balance between like, because was it you or was somebody else that told me in some ways the wedding is for other people? Else why would you bother?
Yeah, I don't think we talked about that, but that's what a lot of people see it as.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cultures too, like I'm Italian.
Okay.
So my dad was like, why aren't you inviting like your great aunt? And I'm like, well, I've literally seen her twice.
Right.
We're having a 60-person wedding. Why would I up it to 100 to have all these relatives that I haven't seen in the last this many years? And he's like, well, it's a respect thing. And I'm like, I still respect them.
Right.
I don't know necessarily. I would rather celebrate them in a dinner privately and get to know them again and get to know them, me as an adult, rather than have them at my wedding that I'm not going to see them for longer than 2 minutes.
Right. That's interesting though. And then you wonder, like your dad bringing that up, like it's in a way where it's like, it's for him in some ways then, right?
Yep.
It's like my daughter's getting married and I need to now that's a huge thing too, the family, the cultural element, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, and some families, some cultures are huge on family, right? And coming from Italian, family is a huge thing for us. And
right.
I respect it. My family is very important to me. But also so is my marriage and my husband, and we wanted a small wedding, and we made those tough decisions.
Right.
And it was about us. It's about us, and it'll continue to be about us.
Would you say I was talking to my girlfriend before I came here, and I said, what should I ask? But just for some perspective, and she said, ask for some do's and don'ts, or what are a few things that brides should do or should remember. So that's one, is like, it is about you and how you feel.
Yeah.
Is there anything else beyond, or like maybe tied to that?
Yeah, I think a lot is you're going to get a lot of unsolicited advice while planning your wedding, and people want to be heard, and I think it's really important to listen, but you don't necessarily have to take it. It's one thing to have a conversation and be like, okay, I respect your opinion, I appreciate your advice, but that's it. You don't need to take it and change your whole plan. You don't need to take it and do anything with it. You just need for them to be heard. And I think that's very important, that's in any industry, right? They just want, people just want to be heard.
I just want to be heard. It's almost like just let them get it out.
Totally.
Let them get it out. This is off topic, but I was shooting for one of the news stations here in town, and I went to a protest, this anti-mask protest. And all these lunatics yelled at me, and they just yelled at me, "You're shitty news, you're fake news." And I thought about it after. I'm like, I hope they feel better. Like, just get it out.
Yeah, right.
And there it is. Now can you move on, please? Because this is not about you or me.
And I've had that in restaurants too, where people just like to yell, and I'm like,
get it out. Do you feel better yet?
Yeah. And then honestly, I've had people come up to me after and apologize because they're like, okay, I was mad at this person, and you just happened to be in the line of fire. And I'm like, no worries. Like, I'm one of those people where you could say something terrible to me, and I would 100% go home and think about it. But I'm like, I know. It wasn't me, right?
No, it wasn't you. That's the crazy thing, is maybe it's never you, and it's always the other person.
Yeah.
So you must have seen some people at their worst in some ways, hey? Like hospitality, weddings.
I've seen a lot of things.
Okay. You're scarred.
Yeah, I'm damaged.
No, but that must give you some sense of something, right? Like, is this a culture, or is this a time where people are walking around carrying a lot of baggage and they're just looking to explode, and then the wedding is kind of like that last straw maybe, or that?
Totally. Yeah, I get a lot of brides that are, I had one last year that she was just so overwhelmed with the changes and the restrictions, day to day, never mind, like right now we're week to week or week to 2 weeks. And she just called me, and she was so upset with things changing and not knowing what to do, and not knowing if she was making the right decision with going ahead with a very small wedding. And like I said, I flat out was like, what did the two of you want? Forget everybody else. If you had a choice between getting married just the two of you right now and going on with your life, or postponing because you want to have this party or dinner or whatever for somebody else, and she's like, I get married right now, no questions. I'm like, there's your answer.
Does it take that sometimes for you just to like cut through all the shit and just say like, what do you need to do right now?
100%. Yeah, you got to take out, like, you just flat out be like, if you could get married right now, nobody's opinion mattered, nobody would give you your advice, yes or no.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, then there's your answer.
Good for you. So you're a lot of things in one almost, hey? Director, manager, producer, coach, therapist, guidance counselor. Yeah, man, you love it though, right?
I love it. It's so funny. Weddings are so similar in so many aspects, my clients have very similar personality traits. Like I said, they're all, very organized, very detail oriented, very type A in the sense that they know what they want, they know what they like.
Okay.
But their personalities are different in the sense that you never know who you're going to get, or in weddings you never know who you're going to meet. You never know how the guests are going to be or behave or act, or I met you, didn't expect it, so.
No, definitely didn't expect it. Don't even remember it. Well, I don't anyway. I do remember it, but not well.
Vaguely.
Vaguely. Yeah. Anyway, it rained a lot that night. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that.
How were the pictures? Did you do pictures in the rain?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. Oh, you weren't there. Why the hell would you be there? Yeah. What's your deal there? How long do you stay to what point in the night?
It depends. So for the most part, I'm there for like the setup aspect to oversee everything.
Right.
And then till like the last vendor goes home. I just make sure everything's, managed, they're not forgetting anything, because the last thing you want is hotel being like, okay, here's a charge because your DJ forgot his whole setup. And then the couple's stuck with the bill at the end of the night.
Okay, so you've seen that, but so you kind of know, that's cool. I guess that's like anything, like as you're an entrepreneur, you always get that next one to then refine your process a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is interesting. It's the 18th, and I really do think that 1 year ago on the 18th, they hadn't announced CERB yet, like the Canadian benefit, and I was watching Trudeau speak, and I just sat there thinking, I'm so fucked. Like, before I go on, did you at any point like feel like I'm fucked?
Yeah.
When COVID came?
Yeah. I honestly had a countdown to when COVID ended, to be completely honest with you.
Oh,
so I was like,
never.
April 30th, 2020, this is going to be done. And I had a countdown on my phone.
1 month, you thought?
1 month.
Oh, no.
Yep.
Okay, good for you.
Dead set. And I was like, this is just like a little flu bug.
Yeah,
I have a kid
right.
in school. Everybody gets like the seasonal flu. And I was dead, like I would have bet money, like thousands of dollars, this would have ended April 30th, 2020.
What gave you that? Just your personal belief, or?
So it was funny. We went to Vegas, my husband and I, for like a pre-honeymoon, or a pre-marriage vacation.
Right. This is part of the 5-year plan, right? This was
Pretty much. So we went February 29th, 28th, 2020. So literally like right before it, like the world came crashing down.
Yeah, right. Right.
So we were in Vegas walking around, and it was like, Vegas is crazy busy all the time. So we were walking around and we're like, this is weird. Like hotels weren't as busy. The Bellagio, you could go stand in front of the fountains. No one was near you. Sanitizer was like a thing. It was just eerie. And I'm like, okay, clearly it's hit the States before it's hit Canada, right? And I was like, it's just making its way through countries. And I just never thought about, it's like the flu, right? Like I said, my daughter goes to school, she gets the flu bug every year. She's over it. We go on with our lives.
Right.
I just never thought that it would be what it is today, and it's mind-boggling to me that there's countries like New Zealand, and if you're on Instagram, you go see the clubs that are open, jam-packed with people, and then we're still here, not able to get a vaccine rolled out.
Yeah, struggling. What did I just hear today on the way here? The plane carrying the vaccine had a mechanical error, and they couldn't get it here. It's like,
Of course it did.
Did it though? Did it? Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I was in Florida right around that time last year, and nothing. There was no sense of it. And now to think, boy, we cut it close. Hey, we almost got, like, a friend of mine was in Arizona, and he had to quarantine for like a month or 2 weeks. When he came back, he kind of had crossed that. So I guess what I did in response to that was I built that website. I started trying to offer wedding slideshows 100% as a digital process, Hasn't been, it almost doesn't matter, because ultimately what I did a year later was like hook up with you, and now you're offering it, which thank you very much for maybe. I mean, we got one, so that's good.
Yeah, well, you're fantastic at it. So, I mean, you made it easy.
Thank you. I enjoyed doing it. So then, so I'm curious. So then all for a month where it was just insane, all I had to think about was that website. So I'm wondering how you shifted in the early days of COVID for your business.
Yeah, so I think it really helped just like going through the whole wedding. Like so when we got married, we were doing a surprise wedding. So nobody knew we were getting married. Not family, friends, absolutely nobody.
Oh.
So when, March 16th, they made that announcement that it's come to Canada, things are going to start closing, whatever.
Right.
And then our wedding being planned on March 23rd.
Right.
Everything closed. It was okay, fight or flight mode. Like, what do? We cancel a wedding? That wasn't an option because the date was very important to us.
Okay.
So it was just, vendors. It was figuring out vendors, figuring out this, figuring out that. And then I'm like, okay, March, not a lot of people get married. I don't have any clients that get married in March.
Okay.
So then it was like, okay, I just went through this. If I just went through this we only had 12 people at that moment coming because we were doing a larger party later on in the year.
Okay.
How the hell are my clients feeling that have 250 people expected to be coming to venues later on this year?
Yeah.
So I always contingency plan everything. I worst case scenario absolutely everything. My daughter knows that she asks the question and she's only 8 and she's already like, Mom, don't worry, this isn't going to happen. And I'm like, well, why would that
figured out?
Yeah, why would that happen? And she's like, well, just in case. And I'm like, well, I wasn't thinking about that before, but I am now.
Yeah, thank you for the extra anxiety.
Right? So just like coming up with that plan A, plan B, and seeing where to go from there. So it was almost a blessing in a sense that I went through it first, knowing that.
Interesting.
I know what to do, seeing how flexible vendors were, because everyone was like, in March, everyone's like, well, I can't do your hair, I can't do your makeup, you don't have a mask on.
Right.
And back then, masks weren't even mandatory, but it was just we thought we could touch people and get it, right? Or we thought we could touch a table and get COVID.
Oh, that's right. You used to wash your groceries. Remember that?
I washed my groceries.
Oh, I washed mine. So that's interesting. You were like the guinea pig for your own.
Yeah, pretty much.
So how did it go? How many people? None?
No, so we had to get married in our kitchen.
Oh, God.
It was my husband, myself, my daughter. Our commissioner snuck in because we didn't know if our neighbors would call the cops on us.
Wow.
We had to get a coworker because we didn't want anybody associated with the wedding because nobody knew.
Oh, okay.
So I called my coworker and I was like, hey, what are you and your boyfriend doing? Can you come sign our marriage papers? And she's like, yeah, absolutely. So they came, they stood far away from us, but we were working together and I was in the office at that point.
Okay.
So we were technically like a cohort, even though cohorts weren't a thing at that point.
Right.
They signed the papers, they witnessed the wedding, they left, and my dad called me the next day. He's like, what'd you do last night? And I'm like, oh, we got married. And he was like, what? And he starts laughing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. And he's like, well, congratulations, I guess. He's like, that's so exciting.
Wow. That's crazy. I was at a wedding. That's so funny because I was at a wedding on Saturday shooting, and it was the same thing. They got married in the damn kitchen. The bride came down from upstairs. Mm-hmm. A year later, we're still fighting this.
Yep.
So what was your big takeaway from that? Was that what was your big takeaway from that?
My big takeaway is, make sure you're working with vendors you trust, right? Because you don't know. I see it a lot where people book vendors based on cost, and this is a whole other topic, but I price myself based on the fact that if I wouldn't pay for it, I can't charge my clients for it. So I come from 12 years of experience. I'm double certified. I could be charging more than what I'm charging, but I charge myself based on what I would pay for my services. So making sure that you use vendors that are an actual business, that are reputable,
right,
that know what they're doing. I've seen photographers, videographers that I could take better pictures on my iPhone, to be completely honest with you.
And they're charging $5,000 for the day or whatever.
Or they're charging $30 for a session, and I'm like, yes, you're saving money, but are you going to be proud of these photos when you see them? And it breaks I've talked to friends, and they're like, oh, my photos were so terrible. I wish I would have spent $10,000 on the photos,
right,
just to have something
real,
to have all my family looking at the camera. And that's the biggest. That's every single person says that, and I'm like,
really?
Yeah.
They have their wedding photos and not everyone's looking at the same time?
Yep. I've had 3 acquaintances say that was their biggest takeaway. And I'm like, if I can, I will full out plan a photo shoot for you, free of cost, free of my charge, to make you have those photos, just nice photos for your memories. And they're like, I'll reach out for you when I'm ready for that, because it's still, my one acquaintance has been married 3 years now, and it's still a very sensitive subject for her.
Ouch. And there's no way you can redo that.
No, but we can make it look like, right?
Maybe.
So I did, a side story is we were planning to get married June 26, 2020. That was our original reception date. So everyone thought we were getting married that day. But we were planning a surprise wedding, March 23rd. So that date came and COVID was still a real thing, and we knew we weren't going to be able to have 60 people indoors. So we made the call back in April to cancel everything. So my husband, myself, my daughter, and then 2 of our really good friends went downtown and did like a stylized stage shoot. So to get all of our formal photos done, because formal photos were very, very important to me. So my stepdad, I called him, and a few weeks after, I posted a couple pictures on Facebook, and he goes, oh, so what's new? How are things? And I could tell he was a little off, and I'm like, what's going on? And he goes, well, how was your wedding? And I'm like, what wedding? Like, what wedding? We got married in March. He's like, no, your other wedding. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, he's like, well, I saw the photos on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, those were just like our form. Like, there was no wedding. That was just like the 5 of us. He's like, oh, you didn't have like a wedding reception? And I'm like, no. And of all people, you don't think you'd be there with us? And he's like, it looked like a real wedding. And I've had tons of people reach out and be like, I thought for sure you had a wedding.
Interesting. So is that something you would maybe suggest to like book a photo day?
100%. If you spent the money on the photographer, you spent the money on a videographer, why the hell not spend, total, everything in, we spent maybe $1,500 minus, so like drinks, food, we got a cake, a little bit of decor, $1,500 to just like go have fun and walk downtown.
Just make a day out of it, kind of.
Yeah. And it was all about us.
And that's what it's all about. Okay, that's interesting. Do you offer that, or do you offer packages like that, or you make that suggestion to people?
Yeah, I totally do like customized package, consulting, all that stuff, because like I said, I feel like a year of full out COVID with weddings. I feel like at this point I've done almost all of it.
If you could do it for this, if you could marry people in 2020, you could marry people.
Right?
Anytime.
Yeah, and I did weddings for 25 to 50. Indoors, because at that point that's what we were allowed.
Right.
Up into, we did 100 outdoors, so I've done, I think, a little bit of everything. We've spaced table. I have a tape measure in my kit, so I'm literally measuring tables 6 feet apart, doing the math with like, okay, they have to pull their chair 2 feet, so what does that mean for spacing? So I'm not good at math, but thank God for calculators.
You're good enough, I think. You're putting in more effort than the average person.
I hope so. That's what I want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, things got crazy there for a while. When was that? It was like the summer when they started reopening, and then you could have decently sized indoor gatherings.
Yeah.
Now, what was that like as far as like how people behaved? Like a few drinks and it's like social distancing is what? Like,
yeah.
Did you see that, or?
For the most part, I was very surprised. Once people started drinking, you're right, people got comfortable and they were still talking, but it was at a comfortable space where, you could put your elbows up, both people, and they were still far apart. Which, is still respectable. When I'm drinking a couple bottles of wine, there's no way I'm that far away from people.
No, I'm on top of people.
Exactly.
I'm on the same couch cushion.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
Sharing is caring.
Right. Okay. So, but you saw that people were at least making an effort, like they modified their behavior, even if it wasn't.
Yeah, I definitely think it was like unconscious, and it was just embedded in their head by that point, because we've been a couple months into it, and it was like I do a lot of weddings for nurses specifically. So I think them just knowing the dangers being in the hospital and hand sanitizers and wearing masks when they had to, so I just think it's embedded in their head that they are taking the precautions when they need to, and they're comfortable talking. We had this really good system, one of my couples, where they had stickers. So it was green was I'm good for hugs, and high fives, green, I'm good for hugs. Yellow, I'm good for talking. Red, please keep your distance.
So like an older person might be a red.
Yep. And that's what it was. It was, stay away from grandma. She's good with like a wave across the room. Please don't approach her. Stay away from grandma.
Yep. But okay. At the same time, that's unfortunate though, in some ways, what this virus has done to our culture. It's necessarily forced us apart in some ways. Was there times where a wedding just maybe wasn't what it could have been, or people felt like, I didn't really have that deep connection that I wanted, or?
Yeah, I think, again, in some ways it's been a blessing in the sense that with your guest list especially, you're not inviting people that it's like obligation, where it's like, okay, I have to invite my 3rd grade teacher because my mom talks to her once a month.
Right. That's also interesting. Yeah, it's like, I really don't like that person. Yep. They definitely are not coming.
Yeah, so I've had, a lot of those conversations too, where it's like, okay, do you really want to invite this person because your friend just started dating them last week? And it's like, well, no, I don't want to, but I feel like I have to. And it's like, okay, well, grandma or boyfriend?
Somebody else's boyfriend.
Yeah, and that's it. When you put it in perspective like that, a lot of people their feelings might be hurt, but they're way more understanding given the circumstances we're in. And I hope it really goes further and continues like that, because at the end of the day, again, it's not about my feelings, it's about the couple's feelings and what they want. And if they don't want your boyfriend there, they don't want your boyfriend there. It's have a conversation offline a couple months down the road, say, hey, you know what, that really hurt my feelings. Don't talk about it leading up to the wedding. Don't talk about it on the day of the wedding.
Okay, that's great. I'm not gonna clip it and repeat it, but you're gonna repeat it just there. Oh, you don't even have to, but I hope everybody just heard that. It's like, if you got problems with people and the way they're dealing with their wedding, don't tell them at the wedding or right before. Let the honeymoon wear off. And
yes. Yeah. Wait until after the wedding. If there's any issues, bring it up after the wedding. Let it, you know what, take your feelings out of it.
Yes.
Just bring it up after the wedding. Let them enjoy their time. There's bridezillas, there's groomzillas, there's momzillas, there's friendzillas. Just after.
A lot of Zillas. That's too, yeah. Have you ever had one where it's all Zillas? Like just everybody was a Zilla?
No.
Oh, that's good.
And I've yet to have a bridezilla, knock on wood.
Really?
No.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Because what would that look like? That'd be hell on earth.
Yeah. When I worked in hotels, there was a couple momzillas.
Okay.
But I think it's just moms feel like they know best, and I know that because I'm a mom, and I know best for my 8-year-old daughter. I'm not even going to lie.
Well, you do. You do. She'd be up on the roof if it weren't for you.
If she could have a wedding right now, it would be full of like bubbles and pools and jump rope and
candy.
Yes. Candy bar, no buffet.
That'd be the best wedding, actually. Maybe there's something to that.
Right? So I understand moms just care, and they care a lot.
Right.
But again, it's the thing with, we need to remember whose wedding this is and keep in mind what they want. And I completely respect opinions from each side. But if the couples don't want to hear it, we need to respect that boundary.
Totally. Yeah, respect the boundary for sure. Like moms care on like a deep.
Totally.
And you would know better than me, obviously, but like, it's almost like a unconscious caring, right? Where you can't even justify, just like mother bear kind of thing.
It's harmless for sure. Like I understand it on so many levels, and I respect it. But again, it's keeping in mind you gotta let the couple make the ultimate decision, no matter if you're paying for it, no matter what. It's ultimately not the parents' decision to make
it's not, even if they're kicking in $50,000 for the thing.
Yep.
Have you seen that where it's like mom and dad try and swing the money hammer or whatever you want to say? Be like, I'm paying for this.
Yeah, went back in my hotel days for sure, and that was, a hard thing to see, because I've seen a lot of brides just, their emotions just get the best of them, and they feel defeated ultimately. Oof. Right? Like, how are you supposed to say, no, I don't want that, mom, and then you see that, okay, well then I'm not paying for it, and then it's right. That's not fair to anybody on any side, and I don't want to be in the middle of it.
No. You're just wondering, is my check going to cash now?
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, are we still going ahead with the venue? Do you guys need some time?
Did I get my deposit?
Yeah, pretty much. But no, I haven't seen it recently, and good. I mean, I hope that I don't.
No, I hope you don't either. I hope none of this bad shit happens to you that we're talking about.
Yeah, right? Worst case scenario, I told you.
Right. So your first wedding, you told me, was May 29th, I think?
Yeah.
And how many you got for this year?
I have 20 this year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I'm very excited. I'm, fingers crossed they all happen. I don't see them not happening. A lot of people are postponements from 2020, so they're like, you know what, let's go ahead, let's get married, let's do this. Some of them are legally married and just wanting to party, whether it's dinner, whether it's, seeing people for the first time in a year, which is a huge thing. And I haven't seen my family since Christmas 2019, because we get together for holidays.
Wow.
So like, to sit in a room with my family, we haven't sat together since Christmas 2019.
Are they not in Edmonton?
No, they're in Sherwood Park.
Oh God.
But just like Easter last year was canceled.
True.
So it was just one of those things where it never panned out. So, I mean, I feel bad for people that don't have family, in the city, in the country. My heart breaks. I have a friend who, her family's out east, and she's like, I haven't seen them since, it's been, this year will be 2 years. And I'm like,
wow. Yeah, you do almost take that for granted, like I can still go stand in my parents' backyard 10 feet apart and whatever that's worth, it's better than nothing.
Totally.
If you're enjoying this conversation, please subscribe on YouTube and give us a like. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. And now, back to the conversation. Yeah, this wedding I was at last weekend, the bride had moved from somewhere out east, but the family actually traveled to Edmonton for this. So that was really, it actually became quite emotional when she said, you guys aren't here. It feels like you're not in my life. You're not sharing my experiences. I almost teared up.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to run the camera and not be a jerk off, crying in the back of the room, but like
sobbing.
Yeah. But it was like, again, like just to get back to what I said earlier, is like the emotion that can be unleashed at a wedding is like unlike really anything else that I've seen.
It's funny, I was talking about this the other day with somebody about how I go to weddings. I love the speech part because I don't know these people very, very well, like very, in depth. I don't know their history, how they met their bridesmaids, their school stories, that kind of thing. And just like, I love the speeches because then I know them on a deeper level. And I'm sitting there crying with everybody, laughing with everybody. And, I get weird looks. So like, aren't you just like the wedding planner?
Yeah, what
like,
do you care?
And I'm just like, it's so nice you see how much people care, right? And they're surrounded by so much love and support. And it's magical to watch everybody come together for that one special day. We all know there's the jerk, whoever that said something the day before that upset somebody, but they're all there for one reason, to love and support them and to tell those stories. And I love watching it all. I just like watching the couple's face light up when they see it all come together and knowing that this is, all that money and the time that they've invested, this is what they've created.
A friend of mine had a very costly wedding in Canmore or something like that, and I'm sure it was probably $100,000 or more. And I asked him one day when we were driving home from a bachelor party, a different bachelor party, like man to man, friend to friend, we've known each other for 20 years. Why did you do this? He's like, that's just how it was. That's how my parents did it. That's how my grandparents did it. That's how her family did it. It's kind of cool, tradition. But also I wonder, I guess my thought was just like, okay, but that seems like a major headache.
Yeah, I mean, and it can be, right?
Right.
Like I said, coming from an Italian wedding, to have like less than 200 people at your wedding is crazy.
It's a shame.
So, right? So that's when I went for a 60-person wedding. I'm like, these are literally people that, like, we cut a lot of people.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people that may have been important to us at one point. But my biggest thing was, because I have a daughter from a previous relationship, I didn't want anybody coming up to her from my husband's side and being like, oh, hi, who are you? Because
that's weird, right?
Making her, if anybody made her feel uncomfortable in any given time, I would have went from 0 to 100 real quick, right?
You would have been bridezilla.
100% I would have.
Oh, no.
So, and that was like a conversation I had with people, and I'm like, it's, if you want to have a conversation with me, if you want me to explain this further, I'm happy to have it. It's not personal. I wish you were a bigger part of our life. My husband and I were together at 5 years when we got married, so there's no excuse for why you can't. We're adults, right? Like, there's no reason why you can't call. The phone works both ways. If you haven't met my daughter,
take the hint.
Right? So if you're not going to put an effort into my life, so much going on, I don't have the time to be a one-way relationship, family or not.
Cool. Well, that's a great way to look at it. I love the strength. Can I get you to straighten that microphone out just a touch so it's pointed more? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So I have this other thing that I always say to my girlfriend when we do get married, because there's been moments where I'm at a wedding and I'm sitting there like, oh God, and I'm watching the poor groom stumble it through or whatever, and I'm like, oh, he's going to cry. Here we go. Boy, oh boy. And he looks at me, and there's that moment where it's like, I know you don't know me, and yet here I am in this incredibly vulnerable moment for you. That's the one thing I don't want at my wedding. When it happens, if it happens, to look out into the audience and see a stranger.
Totally, yeah. And that's how I was too, right? Like, we had people that were dating people, and I flat out had conversations, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, you don't get a +1 based on the fact that you've only been dating for a year.
Yeah, what is that? He might not even be here tomorrow.
Totally. I love you. This is like when we do family photos, my siblings, if they're with somebody, they don't get, their significant others don't get in the family photos. That's just
That's great though. You don't want that. I mean, fuck it. Bring them to the reception. Fine.
Yeah, and that was,
Then I can get to know them.
Yeah.
But why immortalize them in the pictures?
Yeah.
Or have them in that?
Well, they weren't even invited to nothing.
Oh, good for you.
Nothing. I was cut and dry, but that's how I am in a lot of aspects of my life. So
hey, if it works, I mean, it must be working. This is big because I didn't even know this. You have made it work now, where you quit the job and your side hustle became your career. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're doing something right.
Yeah, I think so. I hope so.
I think so. I know you are. So actually, that brings me to something I was going to ask you about. Was the corporate job sort of a means to an end, whereas like your 5-year plan was to get out of that and do the weddings full time?
No, I never ever planned on doing this full time.
Okay.
I still ideally would like to have something part time, just because weddings are
pretty seasonal.
Yeah, very seasonal. And my daughter's in school full time. My husband works full time. So during the day, I need something to occupy my time.
Right.
I volunteer on 4 boards right now. I have like contract work that I'm doing.
Okay.
So, I mean, I have a lot on my plate, but just my days are a little sporadic. So I'd love to have something, school hours are like 8 to 3. So just something to fill the gap. And I've always been someone that, like, my hobbies are always something that makes me income or, helps me grow, helps me learn.
Yeah.
That's
great.
I've had all my fun in my late teens, early 20s. Now I'm in my 30s. It's time to benefit me and my family. So
right on.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So you said something interesting there. I just want to make sure I heard it right. Your hobbies have always been something you could convert into a job?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
That's really cool, because I'm working on this idea of like the path. I call it the path of least resistance to the self. I wonder if maybe, have you found, like, for me, it's getting easier and easier to live my life because I'm only really doing the things that I can do. I'm not doing much that I really am not interested in or can't do. Mm-hmm. Do you feel you're tending towards that yourself by any chance?
Yeah, I think my background is administration, events, hospitality,
right,
those kind of things. So like my contract work's all admin work, obviously weddings.
Sure.
I just did a contract with a corporate client doing their events in the city. So it's just, I feel like a lot of things are just easily coming to me, making those connections, being put into contact with people that need the assistance. But yeah, I'm 100% with you. As much as I love growing and learning, I'm doing a contract right now for a school in Saskatchewan. So learning about the education system in Saskatchewan is like mind-blowing to me.
Oh, that's cool. What's the contract, like what's the scope of work here?
So I do virtual assisting for a company. So I'm a third-party virtual assistant. So just... Yeah, the scope of work is insane, and it was like a little tiny project, and now it's grown into this bigger project. And so the amount of work that I'm researching and learning about and doing, it's so interesting. And school systems, my daughter's in school, so I mean, it's wild how much different Alberta to Saskatchewan is, first of all.
Okay.
It involves international students, so it's wild to learn about visas and what you need in that regard, and COVID readiness plans and all this stuff that I never ever would have touched otherwise. So I like to challenge myself. I'm always up for a challenge. I'm the first to be like, I can't do this, I need help, kind of thing. But I have nothing to lose, essentially.
No.
Like, why not give it a try?
Why not give it a try? Because that's where you're going to grow, right? Is if you push yourself to the point where you have to grow, I guess. That's crazy. I'm saying that too much on the show. That's crazy. It's not crazy. It's not that crazy. It's kind of crazy. I woke up from a nightmare and my girlfriend said, "You were screaming." I said, "That's crazy." It's like, that is probably crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I might be crazy. So, okay, so I guess what I'm asking is, like, is there a step beyond wedding planning where you see yourself being even more who you are or growing into, or is weddings kind of always...
Yeah, I would like to get more into corporate events, just because I have the corporate background, I have the event background. I think it would be a very easy transition. I was talking to a girl yesterday. She reached out to me on LinkedIn, and she was like, "Hey, I'm in marketing right now in university. I have a couple questions. Do you mind if I take some of your time?" And I'm like, "Yep, absolutely." And we were on a Zoom call for about half an hour. And she was like, just with my background and everything, she's like, "Have you ever thought about starting an event firm, basically, and hiring out planners?" And I'm like, "That's interesting that you would say that." I'm like, "Yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind, but I have that feeling of just like not being enough." And she's like, "That's interesting you say that." And I think we all have, the feeling of just, we can't do it. And I think, everyone has that reservation of like, "Oh, can I do this? Am I is it like, am I enough? Do I have enough experience?
Right.
Do I know what I'm doing? And I think with me, I believe in like faking it till you make it to an extent.
Sure.
But I also wouldn't want to be like, okay, here I have like 8 planners underneath me. We can do this. I'd want some sense of experience managing other events. Like I have subcontract and I have, contractors and whatever underneath me. But to have something that big is just maybe a 10-year plan, not a 5-year plan.
Okay, sure. But would that be like you take one under your, because I'm looking myself to take a second videographer under my, I can't find the person. If you're out there, please call me. But like, is that the step you think? Like,
yeah,
take on one and then?
I've had quite a few. I was actually really surprised at how many people have reached out and they're like, hey, I'm into weddings. Can I just like come follow you around for a day? And I really respect people that want to see what it's about before they're like, okay, I want to be a wedding planner. I'm going to do weddings, right? Because planning your own wedding is completely different than planning somebody else's wedding.
Yeah, I would think.
So just like having, making sure that you have everything lined up, making sure, and you need a backbone for it because you get yelled at for things that you're like, it's not my fault that you didn't read your contract and you're supposed to bring cutlery to this event. Like, come on, guys.
No.
I've had it happen.
A wedding with no cutlery. Were they eating with their hands?
No, we ran to Costco and got very nice disposable cutlery, but...
That's great. Well, that's a good story, though, right, to remember?
Totally. I use it for very good examples all the time.
Right. Sorry to run you off track there.
No, it's fine. But it's just, I respect people that want to try it, and I think that there needs to be more opportunities for people, out of high school or going into university to be like, okay, I'm spending $20,000 on education, but I have no idea if I want to do it, right? Where we're pushed so hard after high school to get that post-secondary, knowing nothing about what we're getting into, what real life is in that career.
Yeah.
And it's wild to me that that's normal here, right?
Yeah, it totally is. Like, I mean, I guess some schools are more likely to give you like a work experience at the end of your term.
At the end of your term.
The end of your term. Probably use it at the start. Like, just go in and get your ass whooped for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And then say, okay.
And that's why I said to like these people reaching out, I'm like, come spend a 20-hour day with me. Yeah, weddings might be fun to plan, but is it fun being on your feet for 20 hours? And not just like on your feet, like running on your feet for 20. And the one girl like was like, I thought, my husband's a perfect example. He came and helped me on a wedding and he's like, I thought you just like hung out and like, mingled. And I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
never.
But if you start the firm, then you would be that person.
Yeah.
Show up at the wedding for a few hours, have a drink, shake some hands.
Kiss some babies.
Yeah, exactly. Then leave it to the poor lackey who is you now, but not you later.
Yeah.
It's a thought.
Yeah. And my thing is, I was saying to her was that would be a lot of trust to people. And I've had, people I've contracted out not like call me a half an hour before they're supposed to be down for a tear down, go, oh, sorry, I'm not going to make it. I have an early date tomorrow. So I've just had not great experiences with it. So to have that trust for somebody to run, I know what I'm capable of. I have no idea what the next person's capable of.
Well, that's the thing too with entrepreneurship is like you can always squeeze another drop out of yourself.
Yeah.
And twofold, you don't actually always find those people who are willing to do the same. Some people just don't want the risk and don't like, why would I work any harder than I have to?
I think Heather from Blush Makeup Artistry said it great in a podcast she was on a couple months ago.
Cool.
Is that like she works with a bunch of makeup artists. So a lot of her girls want to run a business when it's okay to just work for somebody else. Like there's nothing wrong with working for somebody else. I love working for other people, right? Like I'm happy to do a contract under somebody else's name and make them look fantastic. I have, it's not anything off my back if it's somebody else's company or if it's my company. I just couldn't find anybody else to work under that was hiring.
Sure.
Right? And it just wasn't, I didn't have the opportunity. So I was like, well, I'm perfectly capable of doing this on my own. I have why not? I got a business license, I got insurance, I got, everything I needed to do, and I started a business, and here I am 3 years on my own, and it's working.
Why though? Like was it really just that? It was like, I want to do it and there's no one who can show me how to do it, so I'm going to do it?
I got asked by a few like friends of friends to do their weddings. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it legally and right. So I was like, a business license was like $100. Insurance was, a couple $100. So it was a tax write-off at the end of the day.
True.
It was, being reputable. And I mean, it kind of just trickled down from one thing to the next. It was crazy how, like I said, it just took off, and here I am now.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it. Often that'll happen, right? Is if you just put yourself behind something and just that one singular thing, it will just...
Yeah.
There's something cosmic about it sometimes. I don't know what it is. I was going to ask you something else. Right. So, but you could have very easily just said, well, no, I don't want the risk. I don't want the liability. So it's something inside you that says I can do it.
Totally. Yeah. I think it's my passion behind it is I really enjoy at the end of the day. I mean, a million things go wrong in weddings. And I tell every person I talk to is like so many things don't go according to like the timeline that we spend hours working on.
Yes.
But it's being able to, think 10 steps ahead and think those worst case scenarios for like, okay, I had one time a DJ call and was like, oh, I have a flat tire, I'm on the side of the road. And I'm like, cool, you're 2 hours, this call's coming in 2 hours before, call me an hour before, give me an update. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing I can do 2 hours before. It's not even on my list of things to worry about right now.
That's down here.
Yep, call me back in an hour, give me an update. Call me back in 45 minutes. Okay, I'm on my way. Fantastic, thank you so much. See you soon.
Interesting. It's a sort of like stress management or like being able to weigh everything on the fly almost.
Yeah. Because like if a bride got that call in the morning, I can't imagine what would be happening. As like if I was a bride on my wedding day, if I got that call, I would be calling 87 other DJs being like, I have an emergency. What do we do?
Yeah, totally. I mean, screw you and throw the phone across the room.
100%.
Yeah. That's interesting. So is that essentially what you're doing all the time, is just kind of balancing spinning a bunch of plates?
Yep. That's exactly what it is. I'm, putting out fires here.
Sure.
Making sure this is done, Okay, I have a mental list of 100 things that need to be done by this time. Mm-hmm. How do I time management? How do I make sure it's all going to be done? I go to the caterer. I'm like, okay, you have 50 minutes. And they're always like, yes, we know. Okay, when I come back in 3 minutes, why aren't you ready from the 12 minutes ago? And it's like, well, I'm like, no, you have 3 minutes. And I will stand there until there's plates in hands and people are going out.
That is, so you're that person.
You know what?
Someone has to be, but...
I'm getting paid money to make sure that, we keep to a time. And I asked the couple, I'm like, how important is the timeline to you? Some people are like, I'm okay if things go, a little behind. Some are like, no, I have a photographer there that's only there till 9 o'clock. So if we run half an hour late, I lose those sunset photos.
Yes. You lose golden hour.
Right? And people don't realize those details until their photographer says this. And they're like, well, now we don't get those photos that were so important to me. And I'm like, well, they're important to you, they're important to me. Whatever is important to you today is important to me, so I'm going to make sure it happens. The caterer will not be late. I promise.
The food will be there at least.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was watching my buddy plan his wedding, so much of it struck me like producing a film, which I've done a little bit of. And it's like, is it like there's just so many line items, so many boxes to check that just like, maybe the couple doesn't know, but not all of these are gonna, like, is there always a bit of a give and take or a trade-off?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I have, contingency plans for it, and I was just going over a timeline with a couple this week.
Oh, yeah.
And they were like, okay, so there's too many things and not enough time. And I'm like, the only thing that matters is your ceremony start time, your dinner start time. Everything else, we can work around.
Flex.
And I'm like, because I've done, coming from hospitality, I did scheduling for employees for 12 years.
Okay.
So I can manage timelines. I have my timeline for myself planned out to like the minute. My daughter's bedtime schedule is to the 15 minutes.
Right.
So I got this. Timelines are my specialty.
Hey, beautiful. There's 4 more minutes of daylight every day, so do you shift her bedtime accordingly, or is it? She
has a blackout curtain, so it's fine.
Nice.
We don't mess around.
Just throw her in the black room and.
Yeah, she knows 7 o'clock is what time we get ready for bed. There's no negotiation. Let's go.
Right on. Is she receptive to this, or is it always a bit of?
It's a lot of, I need a hug. I haven't had enough hugs today. My daughter's her love language is physical touch.
Sure.
So yeah,
Interesting. Well, I used to do that. I remember doing that. Just one more. And then it was always, well, where are you going to be? Like when my mom's leaving the room, where are you going to be? Well, I'll be over there. Kid.
Well, and it's funny because one of my coworkers said his kid didn't understand why mom and dad slept together, but the kid had to sleep by themselves. And I'm like, I never thought about that before.
Fair question.
Right? And that's why I said it. I'm like, poor kid.
Yeah. Yeah. He's alone.
Right?
Give him a big teddy bear or something.
I know.
But that's interesting though. I never thought about that. Is there a good reason that a kid should sleep alone?
Yeah,
Surely there must be.
I totally think the dependency issue.
Right.
Because I don't want a child that's very dependent on me. I want her to be independent and successful and, be able to make her own decisions.
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons why I think it's great that my daughter is able to go to sleep. She's all about the cuddles and she wants to hold my hand, and she's 8 years old, and we were talking to another mom and she's like, I'm worried my daughter's going to stop calling me mama. I'm like, my daughter calls me mama and she's 8. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah.
There's still hope.
Yeah, there's still hope. And I try to keep her as innocent as possible for as long as possible because the cruel world's going to destroy her at some point.
Well. Yes, sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I don't have kids of my own, but is that kind of something that's how do you manage that, because you do have to let them out, right?
Yeah, it's establishing, I guess, those boundaries, and I let her cross the street by herself, and baby steps, and I think 8 is still very, very young, like grade 3 I think about, and when I was in grade 4 I think I started walking to school by myself, and they don't let kids walk to school by themselves now until grade 6.
Oh, really?
There's like a policy in school. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's funny how things have changed so much. I'm not that old, but
I walked to school when I was like 7.
Right, and that's like, my sister is 3 years younger than I am, and so she was like grade 2 walking to school by herself because I didn't want to be seen with her. So.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, you're fine. There. You know the way.
yeah, come on.
So yeah, I think, I'm gonna coddle her as much as I can because I want her to feel, love and supported and that confidence, because I see, especially with girls now, just like the clickiness, happening in grade 3 already.
Really, eh?
Yeah, it's hard, and I don't want that to affect her. I want her to be confident, and I want her, to be able to make her own decisions. And, I tell her, she sees adults making mistakes now. It's funny how she's learning, and she's like, that person, like on phone calls especially, she's like, that person made a mistake. And I'm like, yep. And what happened? She's like, they apologized and they said they were going to make it better. And I'm like, that's all you got to do. You make a mistake, you own it, you apologize, and you don't repeat it.
Good lesson right there. And it's not, they made a mistake and then we canceled them and they never get to work again.
Exactly, right? And that's why I tell her, I'm like, mommies and daddies make mistakes all the time. But you know what? You learn from it. And the point of making mistakes is you learning from it and moving forward. You don't dwell on it. Yeah, okay, you can be upset with yourself. You can be mad, angry, whatever.
Sure.
But learning from it and being like, okay, this is what I did wrong. This is how I can fix it. And next time I know from better. And I was like, that's how you become smarter and that's how you grow.
Yeah.
So just making sure that she understands that that's the reality of it and not punishing her for making mistakes. She's 8. She's going to make tons of mistakes for the rest of her life.
Millions.
It's not her fault.
Well, in some ways it's not. But do you teach a sense of responsibility? I guess exactly what you're saying. It's like you make a mistake, you have to own it.
Yeah, 100%. Every morning we go to the bus, and there's been times where she's like, oh my God, I don't have a mask. I'm like, well, I guess you don't take the bus today.
Right. Guess you're walking.
And it was
really
freezing. So we went outside, wait for the bus. So we stand outside in the cold, wait for the bus to come. And she goes, bus driver, I forgot my mask. And the bus driver's like, oh, I have masks here. And she's like, nope, I'm going to walk home.
Oh boy.
And
she really owned it.
Yeah, it was about the responsibility. And I'm like a firm believer in like tough love to an extent. I'm not like as tough as my Italian dad was, but but owning it and being responsible for it and realizing there's consequences for every action. And good or bad consequences. Consequence isn't a negative thing in my mind, but there's a consequence for everything we do.
Certainly there is.
So especially for kids, having them understand, like my daughter will always be like, that's a consequence. And it's like the best thing in the world. And I'm like, maybe we should change the wording for consequence.
Reaction?
Yeah. So just teaching her that things happen, and in the mornings we're flustered and we need to have everything ready. So we don't forget our mask in the morning, right? We can't get on the bus unless we have a mask. And yes, the bus driver has masks, but it's not her responsibility to be supplying us with masks when we have one. So now she keeps an extra one in her backpack.
Okay, so she's learned.
Yeah.
Now, does your daughter socialize with kids that you can tell they don't have that's not being drilled into them the same way?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and I think my daughter's also a lot older than my friends' kids, so that's a huge one.
Okay.
And our neighbors and everything. So just seeing my daughter is, when I tell my London, don't be so bossy. And she's like, I'm not bossy, I'm just teaching them, is how she, I guess, envisions it. So
Interesting.
it's funny how, like, what they pick up on and how they go about it.
That's crazy that even at that age, she can see that there's something missing, and so she's got to...
Yeah. And she means, like, the best intentions.
Sure.
But I'm like, well, it's not your job to teach them anything. Like,
No, I guess, well, is it? Probably not.
I don't want that back on me.
Yeah, sure. You know, your kid was teaching my kid something, and I could see that going awry.
Like, she's a big person on, like, or component on manners. So she's like, you need to use your manners. I'm not giving this till you say please and thank you. And I'm like, you don't get to tell kids to use their manners. You just need to make sure you're using yours. And she said it to an adult. She's like, can you use your manners, please? And I'm like, nope, we don't say that to adults. Like, there is a respect boundary here.
Interesting.
Yeah, so.
Oh, so many things to balance but good for you, because you don't just tell them the sort of, this is the moral standard. It's like, this is the moral standard for you.
Yeah.
You keep
Totally.
it to yourself. Interesting.
Yep. So it's a hard balance with, she's like, well, why isn't that person wearing a mask? Why doesn't that person say please? Why is that person talking to that person like that? And I'm like,
right.
This is how you're being raised. These are my expectations for you. Other people have other expectations. I'm like, I have other expectations for Daddy, Chris, everybody.
Sure.
You know, so we need to, you set your expectations for me and everybody else, but you need to make sure it's communicated and they're met.
So now I'm going to do some interviewer magic and tie that back to weddings.
Perfect.
Is there that? Do you ever have to just like whip it into shape? Like whip maybe somebody or a bride or a groom and just remind them it's like, listen, this is your special day, but you don't get to do this the way you're behaving right now.
I've never done it with a couple. I've done it definitely bridesmaids and parents even.
Okay.
Just being like, hey, like, come on, we got a timeline to meet. We have things to do. I promise you'll have all the time in the world to get chatting and get drinking and getting whatever. When all the formalities are done, the sooner we get going, the sooner you can have fun.
Right. How much of that is drinking? Like people, how big of a problem is drinking at a wedding? That's the question. Yeah,
I always tell them, because like they can't sign, like the best man and maid of honor can't sign anything if they're intoxicated. It's
really,
you need to have 2 witnesses sober over 18. So that's a big thing that people need to know, because if your best man's slurring his words or like swaying, the commissioner's going to be like, you're out.
No.
So
he gets thrown out of the face-off circle like in hockey.
And how embarrassing would that be for the whole ceremony to see, right? Like, I mean, it depends on your crowd and whatever, but
he might get cheered. You never know.
That'd be a first.
Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, okay. But you've seen someone get kicked out of the signing?
I've heard rehearsals, because I've had very drunk rehearsals where the commissioners come up and had a side conversation with the best man and be like, you can't be
this drunk tomorrow.
You will be removed.
Whoa. But okay, so and then otherwise drinking at a wedding, like that's why people go to weddings that's what you look forward to in some ways.
Yeah. I think it's a blessing this year that it wasn't, because WAP came out, and I'm sure there would have been some crazy dance floors.
Yes, WAP. I just saw they do that at the Grammys the other night. You keep that away from your kids, right? Like, how do you navigate that with a child? Yeah,
we definitely monitor her screen time, and I mean, I don't think to my knowledge, she hasn't heard WAP.
To your knowledge, well, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. But I remember being 8 or 9 and hearing Eminem. Well,
and that's it, right? I think there's way worse songs. You listen to some of the songs from the early 2000s, late 90s, and I'm like, I would much rather my kid listen to WAP. There's a song on the radio right now. So WAP you can't listen to on the radio. It's banned from radio play.
There's no clean version of WAP. It would be nothing.
Well, there's a clean version of WAP.
Oh, it's just silence?
No, it's, I don't know what it's.
You don't have to, but please if you want to.
It's going to come to me. But there's another song that's way worse in my mind.
Okay.
That's getting radio play right now. And I'm like, I would much rather my daughter listen to WAP than listen to this song by this male rapper. I'm like, terrible. So it's a fine balance between.
Totally. I remember, was it 10 years ago, that Blow My Whistle song came out? Mm-hmm. I was working with some ladies, and she said that, and the daughter perks up and says, what does that mean? It's like, well, but it was on the radio, and oh boy. So we don't have to go too far down this road, but a friend of mine sent me a text this morning about, and if I'm putting you on the spot, it's fine, but it's like, it had to do with like like little girl beauty pageants and this sort of teaching children about trans rights and all that. Is there a problem here where like that sexualization is becoming more and more easy for the kids to, like it's more it's more in the kids' face, whereas like before when we were kids, you didn't think about that.
Yeah, I've always like told my daughter, we talk about, I mean, I'm pretty open with my daughter. If she asks a question, I'm not going to lie to her. I'd rather her hear it from me than her friends at school or TV or the internet or whatever. Yes. That's always been my stance when it comes to parenting. So we, talked about gay marriage and, lesbian marriage and all that stuff, which I think is very important to learn. And she's asked why people have 2 moms and 2 dads. And I'm like, some people love women, and she's like, I love my friend, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I love my friends too. I'm like, one day you're going to grow up and you're going to decide if you want to marry a man or a woman, and whatever you decide, fully supported. But in terms of that, I think it's definitely more public now. And I don't know why. I mean, I'm probably very sheltered from that because I don't have anybody in my life that's trans or even gay or anything. But I think they're just trying to be more open about it. I learned yesterday that they're making gender-neutral bathrooms in a school. I think it was Red Deer. And so I'm very interested to how that's going to go.
Well, yeah.
Like a small town, right? So, I mean, it's good that they're trying it out in a small town Alberta, of all things. True,
which, if you know anything about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm all about it. I think educating people is good. When it comes to children, I think we need to tread really, really lightly because a lot of kids aren't comfortable asking the questions. Like I know my daughter, she's way more comfortable asking me questions than she would be with my husband or her dad per se. But I've made that relationship with her and told her nothing's off limits. I don't ever want that. So I think it's just having those relationships with our kids and having that open policy because they're going to find out anyway. We want them to know the right information.
Yes, exactly. And it's better that it comes from you because at least you trust that information.
Totally. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, hey, if I don't know the answer, let's go find it out together.
Beautiful. I hate to cut this off. We could talk for another hour. I know I got to get going. You actually cleared your schedule for me, which I really appreciated, but now I got to shut this down. We could do it again in a few months if you're into that.
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually not as nerve-wracking as I thought.
Hey, I'll take that. That's a great testimonial. Olivia, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the North Bank Media Podcast. If you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe on YouTube and give us a like. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe as well and leave a 5-star review.